Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, a couple of days ago on the Intercept, an article was published by Peter Maas, which was titled, "It's Time to Wage War Against Movies That Glorify Outdated Models of Masculinity." Now, I won't subject you to the whole article, but let me read you the paragraph which I think sums up in a nutshell what he's really trying to say here. For instance, you can see Rambo and John Wayne return to life in the latest war blockbuster, 12 Strong, which was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who also brought us Black Hawk Down. 12 Strong is an extravaganza about a special forces team that fought the Taliban in Afghanistan in the weeks and months after 9/11. During the movie's pivotal scene, the leader of the Green Berets, played by Chris Hemsworth, the grievously handsome star of the Thor franchise, which, by the way, as an aside, is a weird way to talk about another man, but that's all right, decimates a hive of Taliban fighters with his rifle ablaze as he gallops ahead on his fearless horse. Yes, he's riding a horse. In the same way that Hemsworth's assault weapon goes rat-tat-tat and the bad guys fall like bulleted dominoes, the scene itself checks off one born-in-Hollywood cliche after another. Of the rugged gunslinger, the warrior in camo, good versus evil, the modern vanquishing the profane, a man at his fullest. So there you go. I'm sure you get the gist of what he's trying to say here, which is effectively that, and it's not just war movies he's talking about really, but any of these sort of portrayals that he considers to be outdated stereotypes of masculinity shouldn't be appearing in movies. In fact, he's really strong about this. He's sort of effectively demanding that Hollywood should stop making these kind of movies. While he complains about these supposed outdated stereotypes, he also makes reference to the fact that other movies that he would prefer to see more of don't make anywhere near as much money at the box office as these types of films. He doesn't seem to connect the dots with the fact that perhaps this is because men actually connect with those portrayals of masculinity. The very portrayals that he thinks are outdated and need to be destroyed are the very things that speak to the male psyche in a very deep and profound kind of way. In fact, that's really the first thing that I thought when I read this article. I was reminded of my childhood and a story that I like to tell whenever I speak to groups of men about what it is to live out an authentic masculinity. I was a kid who grew up in a home with 4 brothers and 1 sister. And with 5 boys in a home, as you can imagine, you know, when it came to watching movies and television, there's a particular type of boyhood entertainment that we all loved watching. And one of our favourite films that in that sort of adventurous, heroic genre was Indiana Jones, the whole trilogy, in fact. We weren't really allowed to watch the second film as much because it was a little bit darker. Good on your mum and dad. You sort of kept an eye on things there. But we watched the whole trilogy and we watched a lot of it. And then when it came to imagination play outside, you guessed it, we all wanted to play Indiana Jones. And you've got 5 boys though, and there's only one Indiana Jones. And we all wanted to be Indiana Jones. None of us wanted to be the bad guys. None of us wanted to be the Nazis. None of us wanted to be the sidekick. None of us wanted to be the sort of the third extra on the right who dies 20 minutes into the film. We all wanted to be Indiana Jones. We all wanted to be the hero. And there's something really good and actually quite profoundly beautiful about that. You know, as young boys, we weren't emasculated by all of these BuzzFeed type filters which would try and strip away the goodness that lies at the heart of that sort of authentic masculine longing and tries to tell us that we should be sort of, I don't know, introspective and sorry and just apologizing constantly because of the fact that we were born males and that means that we are a part of an evil oppressor class and that masculinity is this great blight, this plague, this scourge on the world, and everything evil and patriarchal and misogynistic is caused by the very genetics that make up who we are, and there's nothing good about us, and so we should be either ashamed or disowning that. We weren't corrupted by those kind of absurd filters, and so we see a character like Indiana Jones and we respond to that like a good, healthy, authentic masculinity should, and says, you know what, I want to be a hero like that guy. I want to live a virtuous life. I want to be someone who has noble quests in his life. I want to be someone who's actually about fighting evil, who stands for good and for truth and stands against evil and is willing to give himself to something greater than himself, is willing to sacrifice himself if need be for what is good, true, and beautiful. You know, and we recognize, now obviously Indiana Jones is not a real character. He's a made-up character and he's an exaggeration, but he's an exaggeration of some profoundly good and important truths that men should aspire to, and a healthy masculinity is naturally going to be drawn towards. The movie Fight Club, when it came out, was I think a very prophetic movie that was ahead of its time. In many ways, I think Fight Club is more relevant now than what it was when it came out. I remember that scene in particular where, there's that great quote, that great speech about, we're the middle children of history and how meaningless our lives have become. We have no great war, no great depression. Our lives have become our great depression. And this whole central crux of that movie is about masculinity that no longer has any meaning because it's not authentic. These men who are living self-centered, money-driven lives with no marriage, no family, no woman, no commitment, no adventure, no noble quest, and it's destroying them. It's eating them from the inside out. And that men are actually made to give themselves to something greater. It's very much part of a healthy, authentic masculinity. We are, as men, gifted with, for example, one of our traits is a greater physical strength than, our average female peers are. If you put me alongside the average female in my peer group, I'm stronger. I'm going to have that physical advantage, and that physical advantage exists for a reason. And along with that physical advantage comes, I think, a special calling to take that gift of my masculine strength and put it at service of the world around me, to put it at service of people who are more vulnerable. So to put it at service of women, of children, of those who are broken and wounded or who need that extra assistance in our community. And there's something great about my masculinity, and it gets elevated to really high places when I do that. The other option, of course, is that I can become like a vile Harvey Weinstein type character who takes my masculine strength and a position of power that I hold, and I use it to dominate and to abuse others for my own selfish gratification. And that not only does that destroy a whole lot of lives around me, but it destroys me and emasculates me. That's what emasculation actually is. And so there's something good about this calling to live this sense of self-giving and adventure and good versus evil. That's what masculinity is all about. And that's why these movies appeal to men, because they say something to us. I was reading this article and I was thinking to myself, well, what does he want? What exactly is it that he wants here? Does he want a movie about some predatory gay man who pursues and sexually grooms a younger boy in a predatory way, which is, by the way, now nominated for an Oscar? Is that what he imagines as a good new modern portrayal of masculinity? Does he want a movie about men who are introverted and confused and don't really have certainty about who they are and are sorry for the fact that they have male genitals and they have masculinity and they think that they're evil and they're a blight and that they are just this privileged curse upon the world? And so they spend all their time running around buying new pairs of skinny jeans and soy lattes and just saying sorry to everyone? Is that what he wants to see more of in films? Does he want to see a movie about this new study about cuckolding and men who willingly go along with the adultery that is being perpetrated against them in their marriage? Is that what he imagines is this new enlightened model of masculinity? Which, by the way, if you were ever in that situation, the authentic masculine response is to say to your wife, look, love, I signed on for better or for worse. I gave all of myself to you and I gave it to you for life. And I knew that meant that I was only going to get 10% of the bathroom cupboards for my stuff. So I was happy with that. I knew that I was going to have to watch Bridget Jones's Diary with you every now and then. I was happy with that. I knew that the only place in the house that I could really call my own, and even then it's quite tenuous, is the garage. I was happy with that. I was willing to give myself to you. But now you've turned up and you're asking me to participate in your act of adultery against me and our marriage, this covenant, this commitment that we agreed and signed with and for each other. That's the line in the sand, and I'm not crossing it with you. And that line in the sand tells me the fact that you've turned up here to ask me to participate in that with you tells me this is a really big warning sign that you no longer see me as a man of confidence and strength. You think I'm someone who can be used and abused, and I'm weak enough to go along with this nonsense. It tells me that you have lost your way and your moral character and that you are a promiscuous adulterer. And you know what else? If I stick around and participate in this cuckoldry with you, then I am a spineless fool and I truly will be emasculated and my life will have no meaning or sense of clear direction and purpose. So, no, I won't be doing this with you. That's the correct response. But you see, that's also perhaps an outdated good versus evil, masculine strength, confidence, and certainty type model that it seems that he doesn't really want to see portrayed in these films anymore. You see, I would argue that we don't need less of these portrayals of masculinity. We need more of them. And there's a reason why men cling to them so strongly when they appear at the box office. It's because they are so used to seeing these absurd and sometimes, frankly, quite offensive portrayals of masculinity, either as some kind of perpetual predatory thing. The idea that your masculinity itself is toxic, by its very existence. Or the idea that men are just absolute doofuses who can't actually navigate the world properly. Or the idea that men are somehow just deficient by virtue of their masculinity. We don't need any more of those portrayals. We've got plenty of those. We actually need now these kind of portrayals that call men to return to that sort of boyhood dream of noble quest, of virtue, of living out a healthy story of masculinity where they take the gift of their masculine strength and direct it outwards. And you know what? That's what fatherhood is all about. Now, we didn't need those portrayals once upon a time because you saw this all around you in the culture. It was just lived out. What happened was men would grow up, they would get to a certain age, there would be certain rites of passage, they would enter into adulthood, where all of a sudden it was no longer about them. Boyhood and childhood is where you think about yourself and not others. Adulthood is where you think about others ahead of yourself. And so there were rites of passage into that, and the expectation was that part of that was that you would marry a woman, you would settle down, you would commit for life, you would raise a family, you would be a good, stable, loving husband and father. And these were all ways that you were called to take the gift of your masculine strength and direct it outwards and to use that gift. It was a good and righteous kind of thing to do. And so you didn't need any other portrayals of it. It was just lived and you saw it all around you and you knew this is what masculinity was all about. But today, that whole concept, which is at the heart of fatherhood, what fatherhood's all about, taking the gift of your strength and nurturing people through your strength, which is really, whether you've got biological children of your own or not, that's what an authentic masculinity is all about. Putting your strength at the service of others, which is authentic fatherhood. As I said, even if you don't have kids of your own. And that was the norm. That was what you saw and that's what you lived out. And you understood that this was what it was about. You built moral character. You lived a life of virtue. You worked on the vices and the deficiencies in your life. You worked on commitment. You committed yourself to one woman. You weren't this promiscuous guy who just slept his way around town. You knew how to build those important character traits like loyalty and perseverance and self-sacrifice into your life. Now, no man was perfect and they all struggled at it. But that was the understanding. That's what you were supposed to be doing. But now that's all broken down. And so you've got a group of toxic feminists who run around telling us that that masculinity is this bad, awful, evil thing and that men should just be permissive and submissive and that they should effectively be apologetic for their masculinity, that we should strip away anything that shows strength and confidence and character because, Lord forbid, male assertiveness, that sounds like male dominance and evil and patriarchy again, so we've got to stomp all over that. And at the same time, what you've got is the same group of toxic feminists are trying to sell a different lie to women. They're trying to say to women, you should abandon the gift of your motherhood. Your motherhood is a blight, or it's a curse, or it's an optional extra. That through things like abortion, you should attack the very heart of what is the feminine genius, this profound gift of motherhood, whether you have biological children of your own or not. The beauty of the feminine genius is that women outwork their presence in the world and the giftedness they bring to the world through that gift of motherhood. They nurture and they care for people and they emotionally connect with other people, as I said, even if it's not their own children, in a way that is very much motherly. Men are called to do something different. And when the two come together, you have this complementarity of these two separate giftedness. And when societies are formed and built around them, good things happen. But when you've got a society that is actively attacking masculinity and actively attacking authentic femininity and the gift of motherhood and all that entails, and at the very best is saying it's just an optional extra, at worst it's saying it's something that'll hold you back as a woman, then you're in real trouble. And so what we need is more portrayals that actually draw men out of the stupor, that wake them up and make them go, yeah, why is it? That cause them to question, why is it that I watch a movie like, Black Hawk Down and something in me says, yeah, there's something that calls to me in that film as a man. I don't necessarily mean I'm going to go to war. And I don't necessarily want to shoot or kill people, but there's something about that. And that thing that calls to you is that gift of that call of self-giving, of taking the gift of your masculine strength and putting it at the service of the vulnerable and those who are in need, of being a man who has character and who understands what is true and is willing to stand for what is true and even sacrifice himself for that truth, even if that's what is required. And by the way, these supposedly outdated models of masculinity, they're the very things that you need to be lived and developed in the character of men, so that if, Lord forbid, a leader ever turns up who says, right, I'm going to launch some unjust and immoral war overseas and I'm going to propagandize a whole lot of young men to go and fight in my evil war. At that moment, what you need is men of character who believe in good versus evil, who are willing to sacrifice themselves for that, who are willing to stand up and say, hey, don't listen to that man. He's lying to you. Don't go and fight that evil war. This is not true. But in order to have that man, that virtuous and heroic man, you have to have a culture which celebrates virtue, which celebrates heroism, which actually encourages men to be men of character and men of self-sacrifice, and not men who are stuck in a constantly introverted cycle of uncertainty and a sense of failure just because of the fact that they're male. As per usual, I'd love to know your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments section below. And if you like the content that I'm producing, then please support me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below and there's one on screen now. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Left Foot Media.